I received some terrible news from the girlfriend of Dan Prigge. And Dan was a twice wounded Army veteran, and if it wasn't bad enough the first time, he went back over to Iraq and he really got his ass handed to him the second time. We tried to get Dan down here a number of times. The first one was for the Grand National Waterfowl Hunt last November. And just as Dan is ready to come, we're all excited. The flyers have been sent out from the Grand National. Everybody's excited to have the wounded guys down. And Dan hit a deer with his truck in Wisconsin, and it put him back in the hospital. That's how bad that was. That boy did not have enough problems already. When he recovered from that, we tried to get him down here in January for one of the final hunts that we were running, and he was close. He was that close to coming down here and back in the hospital again. And then we were trying to get him down here for turkey season. Dan was an avid hunter, and he really liked me and Diane a lot. He loved watching the videos, and just a ball of energy for what he had going on with him. The last email I traded with him over this turkey hunt was his 92nd surgery. 92nd surgery. And it just never worked out. So Dan died on the 29th, and we found out about it yesterday. What Dan had happened to him, to hear it from the girlfriend, has a lot to do with the coronavirus, but he didn't have it. He had he was coughing up a lot of blood. He had terrible problems internally. And to hear his girlfriend tell the VA postponed an emergency surgery. They said that's what he needed, emergency surgery for 6 months, because they were overwhelmed there. And they sent Dan back, and I'm told that they gave him the strongest painkillers possible to get him through this. And his girlfriend thinks that his body couldn't wake up from them. Not a suicide, but it had everything to do with the coronavirus there. And she said his body was just too weak, and he could not wake up from that. And what happened to Dan really the second time is, I've talked a lot on here about demolitions and blast injuries, blast effects. And Dan was riding in a very large vehicle. He was a vehicle convoy commander, truck commander of all that. And they got hit with a series of IEDs, and Dan took 2 rockets, RPGs, to his vehicle, and gunfire. And it really devastated that boy. So I've talked a lot on here about blast injuries, and I show this video here, and what you watch in the first section of this video, underwater, is the underwater videos of and simulations of depth charges in the old World War II movies are so accurate. And you can see this on the surface of the water. When that charge detonates, it sends out a shock wave. It pushes all the oxygen out and sends out this shock wave. And you can clearly see it in this video, how far out that shock wave travels. And with any blast injury, when that shock wave goes out and pushes all the air out of the atmosphere, the pressure, when it reaches that maximum distance, it comes back in the secondary effect. So that blast wave goes out and comes screaming straight back in, and then it goes out, back in, until it's done. As you can see there, you get that initial, in the video, this initial shock wave that goes out, and as it comes back in, it pushes all that water up and then you see the secondary shot going out and pushing up that secondary volume of water. And I've always said, and true, if you get it in a confined space, in a building, in a vehicle, it is unimaginable the multiplication of the effects of that shock wave as it goes off of walls and just keeps coming back in that room. And he really got it bad in that vehicle. The shifting of his spine, the traumatic brain, the insane swelling. I guess he was wearing a helmet, and there were guys 300 yards behind him, so with his knees blown out, his arms separated, broken, man, and shrapnel to his optic nerve, and just a host of injuries. Him and his team made it back 300 yards to rescue guys that were in another vehicle that were burning alive. And when he took his helmet off, he realized that the helmet was much like a tourniquet on his head. The blast injury was so bad, when he took that off, his head immediately started swelling and went unconscious. And because of all the IEDs in the area and the ensuing gunfight that was going on, it took them 3 hours to get a medevac helicopter in there. They were worried about landing on one of these IEDs and stuff. And Dan kept us quite informed over the injuries, but when you get a blast injury like that, there's several effects, really 4 of them. But the biggest one is that pressure wave that goes out, and it really gets the hollow organs in your body. So when you see guys that have really gotten blown up close by, the ears get it really bad. The sinuses get it really bad. Your lungs get it really bad. Your intestines get it really bad. It's those hollow organs that shock wave goes through and compresses all those hollow and then blows them all out. And that certainly happened with Dan. He had a lot of internal problems from dealing with that insane shock wave that went through his body, not once, not twice. And the other effect is certainly the shrapnel, and that comes from rocks, debris, metal, if it's that type, the fragmentation off the RPG, that shape charge effect that goes in, even to the point of bone fragments from other guys that are being hit with that throw that into you. And out of those 4 effects, the 5th is the long-term effects of something like that goes on. Dan got it 5 times, and it caught up with him. And it's this coronavirus thing that delayed that surgery. That boy went through absolute hell, but he was always cheerful, and he always talked about how much he needed to come down here. He needed that. Dan needed to come down here. And we just couldn't make it happen. I'm in touch, and Diana's in touch with his girlfriend, Bethany. And right now, there is nothing needed. I will let everybody know. 2-time Purple Heart recipient, United States Army. What a badass. 92 surgeries. Rest in peace, bro. Rest in peace. See you guys.